We are going to spoil the party at Cameron Indoor. And imagine paying $3,700 for a ticket to this game and the Blue Devils lost. Still, you could say you were there. You were there to watch North Carolina beat Duke in Coach K's final home game. But nonetheless, a huge win for North Carolina. This arguably gets them into the tournament. They were among Jerry Palm's first four out entering the day. This is a quad one win, just their second quad one win of the season. Of course, those have heavy value in the net, and you got to consider that. North Carolina getting to 23-8, and what a statement win on the road in Durham. But man, the story here, Coach K, the emotions, and the Duke Blue Devils come up short in his final home game at Cameron Indoor. Let's get some instant analysis. Welcome in CBS Sports College Basketball insider Gary Parrish. Gary, your reaction here as North Carolina spoils Coach K's final home game.
Well, on Friday's episode of the Eye on College Basketball podcast, Matt Norlander and I were obviously talking about this game, and I just sort of wondered aloud, wouldn't it be hilarious if North Carolina won it? I didn't think they actually would. They were 11-point underdogs for a reason. They got smashed by 20 in the first meeting in Chapel Hill. But, this rivalry over the decades has given us one surprise after another, and this is arguably the biggest. North Carolina, very much on the bubble, double-digit underdog, goes to Cameron Indoor and spoils Coach K's final home game of his career. It was an incredible performance from UNC, and Akeem, I think you've got it right. It's not just big because it ensures Coach K loses his final game ever inside Cameron Indoor, but it's big for North Carolina because it probably secures them an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament if they need it, assuming they do not win the ACC tournament.
Well, as I remember on the Eye on College Basketball podcast, you took the points with North Carolina, and you did. You uttered that phrase, wouldn't it be hilarious? Well, it's hilarious for the Tar Heels, at least because they go in and they knock off their rivals and they spoil Coach K's final home game. But more importantly for them, as you mentioned, this all but locks up a tournament spot. Sure, they were among Jerry Palm's first four out and maybe win a game in the ACC tournament, but I would say, look, between you and I mean, it was what we know, this is certainly a tournament resume as you look at it right now. Key moment here, Gary, in this game was that final 3 minutes of the first half. Duke went on a run. It looked like they were going to pull away. This game would be over at halftime, and then North Carolina went on a run to make it a 2-point deficit at halftime. How critical was that to the final result of this game?
Oh, I think very critical, because you're exactly right. There were multiple times in the game where it looked like Duke was ready to pull away, and the time you reference is one of them. But North Carolina rallied at the end of the first half. They're still in it going into the locker room, and then they were tremendous in the second half. Just one big shot after another. Duke could never get enough stops in a row to get this game under control. And I give a lot of credit to Hubert Davis. This is a man who's in his first year as a Division I head coach after replacing a legend like Roy Williams. And he's been criticized by North Carolina fans as well as other fans across the country this season, because North Carolina was a preseason top 25 team that hasn't played like that very often this season. They've been blown out at least 5 times. Got smashed by Kentucky, smashed by Duke, and people started to wonder, is Hubert Davis built to be the head coach at North Carolina? In the second half tonight, he looked like the head coach of North Carolina. Tightened the rotation, never really subbed, and decided he was just going to ride his starters, for the final 20 minutes. The byproduct of that, 4 of his 5 starters end up scoring at least 20 points, and he's got undeniably the biggest win of his career, and it will probably, no matter how long he coaches, forever be one of the biggest wins of his career.
Well, Gary, as you know, the Tar Heels were trending. I mean, they have now won 11 of their last 13, including 5 straight. They were one of those teams where you got to win big games down the stretch, and they did so. This is the kind of stuff that gets you into the NCAA tournament if you don't get an auto bid or you're not a 25-2 team. Now, look, they've got 23 wins. So that's an absolutely great mark, but they didn't have the wins you obviously need. This one, certainly a big one, regardless of the implications in terms of Coach K's final game. I'm curious here. the emotion, right? You're going into this game. The players feel the emotion. They say that, no, it's just another game, but it's not just another game. You're going into Cameron Indoor, 9,300 fans, some of them spending upwards of $250,000 to be there. There's celebrities in the stands, and these are 18, 19, 20-year-old young men facing an event and then have to go play a game against North Carolina, their biggest rival. Like, how did the emotion, I feel like it really factored in terms of how this played out.
It had to have. Listen, I've never participated in a competition of that magnitude, so I can't speak to it from a first-person perspective. But at the end of the broadcast on ESPN, you did hear Jay Billis, offer up the idea that the emotion of the day probably got to this team. And Jay knows what it's like to play in big games, play in the Duke-Carolina rivalry, play in that building. I'll take him at his word. If he believes that it was a factor, I'm conditioned to believe that it was a factor. You can say stuff like this is just another game all you want to. Coach K can say all week this isn't really about him. It's about Duke and North Carolina. But none of that stuff is true. I mean, you saw the routine with Mike Krzyzewski even pregame, coming out, seeing more than 90 of his former players greet him on the court. He's taking pictures, he's shaking hands, he's fist bumping. He's an incredibly gifted man in terms of being focused and prepared for everything. But when you mess with somebody's routine like that, tinker with somebody's emotions like that, it has to play a role, and it can obviously trickle down onto your team. Certainly in the second half, when North Carolina was making a run and getting control of the game, you got to think it starts to sink in with these players. Whether it's A.J. Griffin or Paolo Banchero, oh no, are we really about to lose Coach K's final game at Cameron Indoor? Then you press a little more. It gets to you a little more. I don't think there is any doubt whatsoever the emotion of the day, the pressure of the night, probably impacted this Duke team.
Yeah, excellent perspective, Gary. And as you take a look and really at the situation, you're right, though. This day was about Coach K, and the day will continue to be about Coach K, regardless of the fact that North Carolina won the game. Like, when the day is over, the headline's going to be North Carolina spoils Coach K's final home game. Sure, but the day is still all about Coach K. We're still celebrating the coach that he is. 42 seasons, 5 national championships, the all-time winningest coach in college basketball history, men's and women's. And I guess this loss here, Gary, it doesn't mark the end for Coach K, but it kind of gives us a glimpse of what that might feel like in the NCAA tournament, whether they win one game or they cut down the nets in New Orleans.
I know this feels lousy for Duke fans, for Coach K, for Duke players, for Duke alums right now. And assuming they do not win the national championship, when they lose in the NCAA tournament, that will feel lousy as well. But his legacy is cemented. I think among the most overhyped things in sports is, quote-unquote, how somebody goes out. We always talk about, walking away on top or going out on top. The truth is almost nobody does it, and we almost never remember it. Like, can you tell me what the end of Michael Jordan's career looked like? I have no recollection of it whatsoever. I just know that, regardless of what happened in his final game, his final season, he is widely regarded to be the greatest basketball player of all time. Mike Krzyzewski is similar for college basketball. I don't know where Duke's season will end. They do have a team good enough, theoretically, to win the national championship. But wherever this 2022 season ends, his final season on the sideline, when you look back, you won't look back at this night and you won't look back at this tournament we're about to play. You'll look back at the decades of a career and you'll accurately say that man probably had the best college coaching career we've ever seen.
Indeed. His record speaks for itself, the all-time winningest coach in college basketball history. And to get in the door for this game, Gary, I'm sure you saw it. It was $3,700. It was the most expensive ticket in basketball history. The average ticket price was almost $6,000. Someone paid $250,000 to get in. Now, albeit an auction, but still. Look at these ticket prices. This is ridiculous to get in to a college basketball game. But again, it's not just the game. You're getting in to say you were there for Coach K's final home game. But imagine our Matt Norlander, right? He'd have to pay anything, and he sat front row.
That is the joy of our job. You know, I never try to lose sight of, even, you know, after doing this for many years now. I've been to basically every big-time college basketball arena that exists. I've sat courtside at Final Fours for national championship games. And I never tried to lose track of the idea that when I was a kid, I dreamed of going to things like this. And now that I'm an adult, I get to go to them for free. It's my job to go to these things. Other people work other jobs, then take the money they make from those jobs and they pay to go to the things that I go to, and they usually sit behind me. That is one of the real perks. You know, I think most people in our profession, you get into it initially because of a love of sports, because you grew up watching this stuff and you wanted to be involved in it in some way. And so I know Norlander has had some real pinch me moments tonight because, like you said, it was his job tonight to be at the place the whole world wanted to be.
Yeah, that was an incredible event, incredible moment pre-game, like you said, with the former players welcome him on the court.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.